Chapter 6 Punta Arenas, the southernmost town. Ushuaia, December 22nd, 1897. We decided, before we left, that Punta Arenas as a town is very extraordinary in many ways when you come to know it. Aside from the fact that it is the world's southernmost city, the metropolis of the lower end of the American continent, the dumping ground for so much of discontented humanity, the capital of Chilean Tierra del Fuego in Patagonia, and a host of other large-sounding but small-meaning names. It is one of the most cosmopolitan towns of the universe. Its life and its business are absolutely astonishing. There is a sort of effervescent interest which one quickly acquires in this little speck of bright life and its gloomy wilderness. The interest begins with its misty history and ends, perhaps, today with a modern rediscovery of Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego by sheep farmers and gold seekers. After Magellan discovered the strait and led the way across the jeweled waters of the Pacific, the enterprising Spaniards, with the most important permission of the Pope, gathered easily and peacefully the accumulated wealth of the fertile islands and opulent empires of the South Sea. Any competition from other nations was forbidden by the Pope and prevented by the supposed danger of passing through the strait. Both of these dangers were braved by the bold half-pirate, half-explorer, but entire seaman, Francis Drake. Drake entered the Pacific through the strait in 1578 and, with a scurvy-pestered crew, deprived the Spaniards of their gold and silver somewhat more easily than they had taken it from the Indians. To prevent this reharvesting of their easy-gotten profits, Pedro Sarmiento de Gamboa was dispatched from Lima in 1579 to survey the only supposed entrance into the Pacific, the Magellan Strait. Sarmiento advised a fortification of the straits, and accordingly, 2 colonies were placed on commanding points. These were the cities Nombre de Jesus near the first narrows and San Felipe at what is now called Port Famine. But 8 months' provisions were left these poor protectors of Spanish gold, and they perished miserably before relief was sent to them. Only 2 survived to tell the tragedy, and these were rescued by the British seamen, the men whom the Spaniards were sent to destroy. Sarmiento, who placed the colonies, was captured by one of Sir Walter Raleigh's cruisers on his return voyage to Spain. As this first chapter in the history of the Magellan Strait closed, its importance had also vanished, with the discovery of the passage around Cape Horn by the Dutch navigators Schouten and Lemaire, and for 250 years following, the region was left to the possession of the Arctic life with which nature had stocked it. In 1843, with no knowledge of the real worth of the Magellanic regions, but with a sort of natural pride to possess the historic strait, Chile placed a colony at, or near, the ancient site of San Felipe. This was a penal settlement where political prisoners were sent. It was a sort of Chilean Siberia, just as Staten Island is today for Argentina. And thus the venture filled 2 missions. It held for Chile the Strait of Magellan, and placed the troublesome convicts far from the capital, Valparaiso. This was a particularly appropriate spot for that large class of Spanish-American citizens, the ever-restless revolutionists. But men whose occupation is revolt, whose life is a constant navigation of dangerous rapids, are not the proper sort of citizens to build a town. This was soon learned in La Colonia de Magallanes, by which this Antarctic exile colony was officially known. Anything which savored of work was opposed to their natures. War, riot, massacre, brutal freedom were more to their liking, and this revolting spirit was not a little fired by frequent famines, when the infrequent vessels from Valparaiso did not arrive. The place thus acquired, by hard experience, the name of Port Famine. One day the exiles rose to arms, killed the governor, and took the town. For this they were all strung up by the necks from the yardarms of a Chilean gunboat. The buildings of Port Famine having been fired, the government, after deciding on a re-establishment of the colony, selected for the site of its town a long tongue of sandy ground a few miles farther north. This is the site of the present famous town, Punta Arenas, and it takes its name from the sandy point on which it rests. Punta Arenas, or Sandy Point, like the first colony, had as its principal reason for existence a penal settlement, and its population was composed of men of the same class, mental and moral outcasts, revolutionists, and high-handed criminals. The new town met a fate similar to that of the first settlement. The prisoners revolted and, assisted by the soldiers who were sent to protect the town, they sought the governor. But to keep his own blood from being spilled, this unworthy official deserted his wife and children and left for parts unknown. They caught the commander of the garrison and massacred him in a shocking manner, after which they took the town and held a sort of drunken festivity for 3 days. The governor, in his retreat, had found a Chilean cruiser, and as this came in sight of the town, the rioters, to save their necks, took to the pampas. Here most of the miscreants came to a miserable death by starvation, fatigue, and cold. A few reached the Chubut River and were taken to Buenos Aires, where the liberty for which they had struggled was given them. This last destruction of the colony occurred in 1877. At this time, Punta Arenas had already risen to some importance. It numbered, among its exile settlers, several independent citizens, and these were the creators of the true Magellanic metropolis. No more prisoners were sent. The town was left to live and flourish according to its resources, or to die a natural death. Fortunately, its resources had already been discovered. Some of the desert-like pampas, upon which the liberators famished, had been stocked with sheep, and they thrived unexpectedly. Gold had been found in the creeks. Coal had been found but a short distance off. The forest appeared inexhaustible, and steamers were beginning to cut the solitude of the strait. Dissatisfied, rejected, and venturous sailors cast in their lots with the builders of the town. Shepherds, gold diggers, traders, adventurous wanderers, and striplings from the world's population, a heterogeneous mixture, came to rest here as a last resort. The semi-Yankee life of Punta Arenas takes its origin from this mass, and the town owes its growth very largely to the fact that its site is a terminal moraine to a restless stream of human life. With this preliminary understanding of the causes for the metropolitan life at the Strait of Magellan, one is not so greatly surprised at the first glimpse of the strange street scenes. We naturally looked for some marks of nationality in the first people we met, but quite in vain. Spanish is the language of the place. At one street corner, however, one hears English, at another, German, at another, French, and at still another, Italian. Negroes are few, but Indians are quite numerous. One of our new acquaintances took us about town. He was, I believe, a German by birth, but he talked with us in French, and took us to a bar where he talked English, to a magazine where he addressed the clerk in Spanish, to the church where he addressed the Holy Father in Italian, and others told us that he could speak the various Indian tongues, and was not puzzled with Latin and Greek, though he never had a college education. The streets are ordinary country roads, in very bad order. They are most remarkable for their number of stagnant pools of water, the various heaps of ashes and debris, stumps of trees, broken carts, tin cans, packing boxes, dead dogs, and a host of other refuse serve to ornament and pave the sandy bottoms. Scattered about these, and usually not far from a bar, are groups of visitors in various attitudes. The most numerous of these are the cowboys or gauchos, as they are called, some on horses with ponchos over their shoulders, and wearing huge, broad-brimmed hats and loose pantaloons. Others steeped in alcohol with a soft bed of sand for a couch and a boulder for a pillow, and still others in new suits, moving about like a girl in an Easter bonnet to display their annual acquirements. But the gauchos move in groups to themselves, discussing sheep and squaws and the hunting sport of the pampas. In another group, one finds quite different types of humanity. Here are the gold diggers, men of extremes, either without a copper or with a big fat bag of gold, according to the luck of their past season. Unlike the cowboy, who is usually in neat attire, the miner is careless of dress, and rich or poor, is rigged in rags. But he is a bit of a lion in his way. If he has found rich deposits, his pocket is the ambition of the local tradesman, and his information is eagerly sought by all the loafers of the town. He discusses pay diggings, nuggets, methods of washing gold, the relative qualities of food and drinks, and his last feminine acquaintances in Sandy Point. And then there are the groups of sailors, soldiers, and of tramps. The citizens of the town one rarely sees. They are always occupied within doors, for everybody who is anybody in Punta Arenas keeps a store and owns one or more sheep farms. The location of Punta Arenas is rather unique in its natural surroundings and its commercial advantages. To the west and northwest are the slowly rising forest-covered highlands, terminating in the high, ice-covered peaks of the Cordilleras. To the northeast and east are the endless undulating plains of Patagonia. To the south and southeast is the Strait of Magellan, and beyond are the blue hills of the northern plains on the main island of Tierra del Fuego. To the southwest are the bleak islands belonging to the Fuegian group. This location has helped to make the town the trade center of the great regions south of the Rio de la Plata. The two very important discoveries already alluded to have made life and a prosperous population just possible in this vast savage land. Only a few years ago, all of South America south of the River Plata was believed to be a useless waste of barren ground, peopled by man-eating savages. Even today, this is generally believed to be the state of affairs in Patagonia, but it is not true. The pioneers here are in better health and are accumulating gold more rapidly than in any other part of South America. The reasons for this great transformation are the discoveries that sheep will thrive and that gold is strewn on the various sandy beaches. The possibilities thus afforded have brought the people and the capital to America's southern end, and have made Punta Arenas the center of a population of pioneers, mostly rich in profitable land and in sheep, but poor in worldly comforts. When the far-seeing Englishmen, already referred to, brought the first sheep from the Falkland Islands about 25 years ago, they thrived so well in their new home that soon many others did likewise. Today, almost every acre of available ground is stocked with sheep. The sheep farming, however, is done on such an immense scale that even a Yankee farmer will be compelled to feel his littleness. Space will not permit me to dwell on this interesting subject, but a man owning 10,000 sheep is considered to be a small and poor farmer. One owning 50,000 is quite ordinary, and the men who have 100,000 are not uncommon. The Cape Horn millionaire is not noted by the number of dollars he possesses, but by the number of sheep he shears. Gold mining is the occupation of the poor and the idle population. This is not because gold is scarce or the occupation unprofitable, but because it requires little capital and yields immediate returns. With a shovel and a pan, inexperienced men can earn $5 daily. The gold is widely diffused, but is seldom in very rich placers. Many of the creeks and beaches of Patagonia, both on the Atlantic side and in the Strait of Magellan, are known to contain gold. The same is true of Tierra del Fuego. Even the mud of the streets of Punta Arenas is said to contain the yellow metal. The architecture of Punta Arenas is similar to that of the mushroom towns of the western plains. The houses are made of corrugated sheet iron and are altogether uninteresting, except in that they are constructed of material brought 6,000 miles, while within 1,000 yards is a virgin forest of excellent wood. During the short time of 1 year, electric lights, telephone, and telegraph plants have been established. A really good theater has been built, and several churches are in the course of construction. Nearly every house sells intoxicating drinks. Alcohol is said to be served even in churches. Indeed, alcohol is at the base of all crimes and most of the pleasures of Punta Arenas. Unlike the immigrants to the United States, the newcomers to Patagonia have remained as separate little colonies and never made a homogeneous mixture as in our states. They await with yearly anticipation an opportunity of returning to their mother countries. The sheep farmers and bankers are mostly British, the storekeepers generally German. The Anglo-Saxon is the ruling spirit, and in a very short time this long-deserted no-man's land will be a gilded paradise stocked with the healthy mixture of northern races which has made the United States the most progressive of the new nations of the world. Southern South America is to be the Yankee land of the far south, and for this, their absorption, as stupidly suggested by Rhodes, is entirely unnecessary. The people here are able to take care of themselves, and the republican governments of Chile and Argentina are quite capable of managing their own affairs.